I don't have a gavel to bang, so I'm not going to bang one because we're all adults and all professionals. I want to welcome you, first of all, to the Capital Area YMCA. My name is Samuel Frisbee. I'm the CEO of the Capital Area YMCA. I'm also a freeholder here in Mercer County, so welcome to my house. I want to get a couple things out of the way before I introduce our moderator for the day. So first of all, I want to say thank you to all of the legislative colleagues that we have here today. We've got our newest freeholder on the freeholder board here. Please give her a hand. City Council President, North Ward City Councilwoman is here. That's always glad to see the two of them. Please give her a hand. And we had another councilman here. Oh, hold on, I'll get there.
Blakely's here.
Yeah, Councilman at large is here. Please give him a hand. And then our awesome Assemblywoman, Valina Reynolds Jackson, just elected for the first term. Up for re-election this year. Please make sure that you're paying attention to the ballot. We have the chief. Well, I'm not going to do that because that's your role. That's your role here. We also have the president of the school board here, Brother Gene. Please give him a hand. Who also happens to be one of my board members here at the Y, so give him a double hand. People ask, what is the Capital City Area Black Caucus, and why are they meeting? The Capital City Area Black Caucus came together really at the beginning of the summer when we kept hearing from the people, especially people in the city of Trenton, especially around election time. First of all, nobody comes to see us until it's election time. We don't know a whole lot about what's going on unless it's election time. So what we wanted to do was to give people an opportunity to hear from the change makers in the community, people that are leading the change, people that are making policy, or people that are leading on the executive side, or just organizations that are doing things in the city. And so this was an opportunity to have a forum where people could come together every month, because that's one of the things that we kept hearing is that there's nothing that happens consistently in the city. We hear about something that'll happen, and then it doesn't happen again for a couple of months. This particular event happens every second Saturday of the month, every month of the year. And we've donated the space here at the YMCA to the Capital Area City Black Caucus to be here every second Saturday from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock to take on different issues. Next month is Women in History Month. The month of May we've already looked at is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so the president of UMA will be working with us on a week-long project, but it'll culminate on the second week, on the second Saturday. So we don't want to hear people saying that they can't get information. What we want to do is to hear from people and say, what information do you want? Because now there's a forum for people to actually get that information. Okay? So today is about economic empowerment. And when we talk about economic empowerment, most people remember this YMCA. This YMCA has been here for 163 years. We've been around since 1856. Most people remember the original building that was the second building, which was on the corner of East State Street, North Clinton, which the Y vacated in 1980, and in 1982 Mayor Holland allowed them to come here. This was the old boys club. This was the old supermarket. I think it was the Fine Fair or something of that nature. Right? Because this building was built in 1940. Multi-purpose. Right? Around the same time that Hiltonia was actually being built. Right? That Hiltonia community was built in 1940. This supermarket was built in 1940. And so there's a lot of history here. But when we really wanted to kind of make this shift and change, and I'm tying this back to economic development because I've never had an opportunity publicly to thank the gentleman because he's never been in the room when I've had the mic. So this building, had to be renovated. And recently, about 4 years ago, we underwent about a $1 million renovation, which had about $3 million worth of impact. And we couldn't have done that without a local Black-owned contractor who was here in the city, who not only loved the city, but he wanted to make sure that we had something of quality here. And my man, Edward Hill, EMP Contractor. And that's how we begin to sow back into our community and make sure that contractors, local contractors, get an opportunity to have a bite at the apple as well, right? So there's a man in the room who knows more about that than anybody in the room when you talk about getting people of color connected to where the dollars actually are. You know, and John Harmon is actually one of the founding members of the Capital City Area Black Caucus board. And he's no stranger to anybody in this room. But he's been a partner to us. And I think when the first time we really decided we were really going to partner together was right around, I think, July, when you had the conference over at the Caucus. Right? And we were trying to make sure that we get black contractors and minority contractors bonded in the city. And he had a forum out there, and we didn't think it was attended as well as we wanted it to be attended. And John said, Sam, if you help me, we'll bring the same show back, and we'll bring it back to the Y. And I said, you know what, John? We'll guarantee you that you're going to have at least 30 contractors in the room. John came back, we got the network together, he had at least 30 contractors in the room. So he knows how to get this done, and we want to yield the floor to our friend and a leader in this community, John Harmon.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I know Saturdays for everyone is very precious, and this is the sacrifice that we've all made today, and we want to make it a productive sacrifice for everyone. So what we're going to do today is kind of reset here in the city of Trenton. Sam has kind of given us the history of the city, and I just want to add a few more anecdotes to that. You know, growing up here in the city of Trenton, at one time there were almost, black businesses on every corner. We've been the majority population for a long time, but majority means some things to some people, and it means something to other people. So it's our hope today that we can talk about economics in a way that we're all a part of the narrative. We see development occurring not only in Trenton, but throughout Mercer County. But when we look at the people that are a part of that development, benefiting from the development, it doesn't reflect the majority population.
That's right.
So something is wrong, right?
Yeah.
So today we're going to try to level set. A little bit more about my background. I ran for mayor twice. And went to the locker room and lose it twice, right? I also supported other candidates.
You never lose, John.
Well, let me just finish my point, right? Because as far as I'm concerned, I never lose. I think that was a blessing for me. I also supported other candidates, and some of them lost. But I'm still here, right? I still live here. And I run into folks sometimes and say, well, where are you? Well, I'm trying to help folks who, I'll put it this way. I go where I'm celebrated, not where I'm tolerated.
That's right.
Folks who respond to what we're trying to do, I'm there for them. But those who are still talking, I have little time for that. And as a people, we should have a little time for that as well. In the state of New Jersey, blacks have the highest poverty, the highest unemployment. Let's underscore that. There's over 80,000 black businesses in New Jersey, and only 7% of them have employees. So 93% are sole proprietorships, right? We should operate by facts and not by emotional conversation. And I think we live with a sustained conversation of stuff that's not based on facts. So we're hoping to change that. Net worth in New Jersey, and this number I might have wrong, but I'm close. For whites in New Jersey, their net worth is about $275,000. For Hispanics, it's $7,000. For African Americans, it's less than $6,000. Just let that marinate. We have more black elected officials than ever. In 1967, we had 2 black mayors, both from Ohio. Today, we probably have 700, 800 black mayors. I don't know how many thousands of elected officials. We fought for civil rights. We fought for voting rights. We fought for affirmative action, fair credit, fair housing. and everybody's eating, and we're still serving. So, I'm going to run 2 short videos here, because I don't want to talk too much about who we are as an organization and what we do. We have plenty of materials on the back of the table that I will encourage you to take, because I don't want to take back to the office. But 2 videos, one from corporate partners of the African American Chamber of Commerce, and then the other one is from small businesses. I want them to share with you their perspective, and as I viewed this last night, I felt embarrassed because they mentioned my name too many times. I'm not that kind of person. It's all about us. But fortunately, or unfortunately, I'm the president, and I guess they gave me a lot of recognition. But Sam, if you can run these 2 clips, then we're going to introduce the panel. And as far as the agenda's time, we're still in good time, but nonetheless, we started a little later than we anticipated. But I think each of these run about 4-5 minutes each. And but I think it's worth you hearing their perspective and not hearing it so much from me. But I'm ready when you are. This was at a recent event in September. These are some of the folks who've invested in the organization.
Some folks have attorneys, some folks have business agents. If you're in business, you need someone to help you navigate the pathways to success. And the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey is your best partner if you want to achieve that goal.
The African American Chamber in the state of New Jersey has been extremely useful in trying to gain opportunities for firms of color, particularly in state contracting. New Jersey has had a history of gross disparity in terms of minority firms getting an opportunity in terms of state contracting. And under John Harmon's leadership, that cycle is soon to be broken.
Personally, I love the African American Chamber of Commerce because they're out in the trenches helping businesses, all businesses, not just African American businesses, but all businesses to be successful within the state of New Jersey.
John's outreach has expanded to not only the state of New Jersey, but nationwide. He's also expanded not only to the corporations within the state of New Jersey, but to our second-tier organizations that we work with. He has engaged with companies that are located outside of the state of New Jersey, and John has tapped them to be members within his organization so that he can connect his membership with them as well.
The Chamber is an awesome resource for the state of New Jersey and the business owners as well as the corporations who come here to do business. One of our goals in working with the Chamber is to be more connected to the local business community, particularly the local minority business community. I'm so impressed with the Chamber, and after our conversations this morning, we completed our company profile so we can actually become members of the Chamber beginning today.
New Jersey's a diverse state to begin with. The Chamber is a key organization that really helps to mine out the talent, make the connections, that drive the economic engine of the state.
The African American Chamber of New Jersey is extremely important to tying large companies into some of the smaller businesses. John Harmon has been able to make connections with the larger businesses in the area of New Jersey to do business throughout New Jersey, and also to improve the procurement process of these larger companies and the employment and hiring practices.
So I'm looking to do more connections in New Jersey, in the communities that need it the most. For the business owners that haven't had the exposure to a company like Merck, I think the Chamber, like I said, is going to make that connection for us, and also an opportunity to connect with the employees at Merck, because the Chamber does a lot of great work to not just benefit small businesses, but things like employee business resource groups. It's an opportunity to bring employees
to have the opportunity to meet well-performing small and minority-owned businesses to help American Water with their efforts to impact the economic viability within the state of New Jersey.
I'm extremely happy I started this relationship or begun this relationship with John Harmon and the Chamber. They've been extremely helpful, extremely supportive, and I don't know what organization they'll be part of it, but this is hard. Great group, and glad to be part.
John's done an unbelievable job of getting the decision makers in a row, and also the people who support the Chamber. Members of the Chamber are opportunity to interact with those decision makers. Again, as I mentioned earlier, access to customers and capital is equally important, but those things are happening easier when you have a partnership with the Chamber under the leadership of John Harmon.
It's such a big mission that is being fostered through the Chamber, and at the end of the day, it's really all about advancing job creation in the communities where we live and work. And Johnson & Johnson is headquartered in New Brunswick, New Jersey. This obviously is very important to us as part of the community, but also as part of our credo, being responsible in the communities where we live and work.
I believe that the businesses realize that the Chamber can really help them be more successful. And that's resonating across the state of New Jersey. Be it working with the governor or working with some of the corporations. At the end of the day, the Chamber has to be able to connect members to resources, opportunities, and information. And I think that was confirmed today from a number of our attendees.
Last piece of our members.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shay Richburg. I am a member of the African American Chamber of Commerce. I am the co-founder and CEO of New Jersey FamilyCon. It is the Tri-State Area Family Convention and Expo that takes place annually. We just finished our third year in Atlantic City. I am also the founder of Shay Richburg Consulting. I speak to parents in leadership forums, and I actually help companies such as yourselves. I transition the children from parenting and small children to enter the workforce, and I want them to know what companies like yourself need. So I work very closely with parents because it does start at home. And I want to actively help students and children know the correct paths to take. I was honored and excited when John asked me to speak today as a member and to speak about the benefits of being part of the African American Chamber of Commerce. I consider myself a visionary. I don't focus on what I'm doing today, or where I am today. I focus on where I will be 10 years from now, or 20 years from now. I focus on where my children will be and where my business will be. And in being a visionary, it was a no-brainer becoming a member of the African American Chamber of Commerce. I take my business practice very seriously, and so do all of the members of the African American Chamber of Commerce. I joined to elevate my business on a new level and to bring growth. And John Harmon is the person who actively helps me do that. Since being a member in the Chamber of Commerce, I've had double speaking engagements, and I've also had opportunities to meet celebrities and bring them to FamilyCon too to attract more families. I'm on the path to really implement success within the families and children at an early age. And I take my career and my business so seriously that I knew that only the African American Chamber of Commerce would help transcend my business. Because the Chamber of Commerce is, I like to compare it to an old watch. It's an intricate system where everyone within their range has certain tasks and we must work together. And in the African American Chamber of Commerce, that's the entrepreneurs, that's John Harmon, and that's the large corporations like yourself. So I'd like to personally say thank you to the large sponsors here today for believing in the African American Chamber of Commerce and its members, such as myself. Because I'm here to revolutionize the future of New Jersey through my business and myself. And for large corporations who believe in me and other members like myself, I greatly appreciate that. The first moment I met John, I knew he was a visionary. I knew he was passionate, he had the drive, he had the connections, and he had the ideas to lead business owners to a plateau that can really help the state and to help this community. This community is the future, and if you believe in that, you need to be part of this community. You need to be part of this system that works together with the larger corporations and the smaller businesses so we can bring greatness to this state. So if you're a business owner that's a bit weary on if you should become a member or not, I hope this information was fruitful to you and to understand that joining this community is something more than just a small group. The African American Chamber of Commerce works in strides. John works with legislators, John works with large corporations, and is really gaining traction. As you can see, the people who came up, and thank you to the panelists who came here to speak to all of us today. And I wasn't one of the members who actually spoke and asked a question, but I will be speaking to you and what I can do within my business and how I can speak to the teenagers or the college children and what they need to do early enough so that they will be a prime candidate to work with your company. So again, my name is Shay Richford, and I would like to stress that the Chamber of Commerce is a community filled with highly skilled, highly educated entrepreneurs who are actively serious about engaging their community and growing. And if you are a member of the Chamber of Commerce, I ask you to bring your A game, because we are serious entrepreneurs making serious connections and rising together. Thank you so much to everybody who's here for listening.
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, I brought my notes today because I know I'm in between you guys and lunch, so I didn't want to go on and wax eloquently, so I'm going to stick to my script. So, to the members and to John Harmon as president of the chamber, to Jacqueline and his phenomenal team, to our members and the guests, again, good afternoon. My name is Faye Coleman. I am the CEO of PG Health, which is probably one of the most talked about industries today, which is medical marijuana. I joined the chamber just this year. And I joined because I thought the chamber, and I believe the chamber could help me successfully transition from corporate America to becoming an entrepreneur. Our mission is to support and provide healthy medicinal alternatives through advocacy, access, education, and opportunity in the medical marijuana industry. For me, the benefits of the chamber are numerous, and I can confidently share that the chamber's commitment to the success of our business has been unmatched. You know, there is a dearth of sustainable Black-owned businesses that is of concern. Black-owned businesses are significantly underrepresented, as we are only 7% of all small-owned businesses. And yet we represent 13% of the population. Now, it's also true and interesting that we are the racial group that starts small businesses more than any other. It's interesting. Our challenge has been for some time resources, right? Capital and customers. Boil it down. So, research suggests that communities' generational economic impact and empowerment is linked to our entrepreneurial success. Therefore, if we are serious about improving our communities, our schools, providing jobs, we must advance and strengthen ourselves as Black-owned businesses. Black-owned businesses are the second highest employer of African Americans after the government. The Nielsen Company released a report that African American buying power is over $1 trillion, which most of us know that, right? 16th largest country if we were looking at it from a GDP scale. So what do we do with that? What does it mean? That as a collective, we must shift the mindset of the Black consumer and of all consumers to leverage that economic power by way of supporting Black-owned businesses. Currently, $1 circulates in an Asian community in a month, a Jewish community, 20 days. White communities, 17 days. African American communities, 6 hours. 6 hours. That means for every dollar spent from an African American, 2 cents goes to Black-owned businesses. 2 cents. I don't know about you guys, I was startled to see that, but I get it. The question is, how do we change the trend? We've all heard the saying, before you can save someone else, you must first put on your own oxygen mask, right? I'm here to say that the chamber is your oxygen mask. As you seek capital, as you seek customers, it is the chamber that will provide the network, the resources, the education, the advocacy to support your path to being a sustained Black-owned business. For PG Health, for us, it's not just being an employer of choice, it's about being a community partner of choice. So a brief story. For those of you who may or may not know, to get involved in the medical marijuana business, you have to win a license. You can just not put an application in and it pops up. To do that, to apply, it also takes upwards of a couple $100,000. To win, millions. But that's not the hard part. You must also gain community support from local government, municipalities, churches, as well as businesses and other organizations. This was my challenge as I reached out to the chamber. The chamber was instrumental in setting up various meetings with many mayors and community organizers. Just recently, I was going to meet with the mayor, and I really needed this meeting to go well. I was having a conversation with John Harmon, and that morning he called me and said, you know what, I'm going to show up at this meeting with you. I'm going to convey the support of the chamber, and as a result, we got the mayor's support. Not only did we have the chamber support in that way, but they've also been very significant in terms of the network and the connections that they have at the state level. And as a result, we are now in negotiations for a multi-million-dollar deal. And we're excited about that. I must say, my only regret is that we did not join the chamber sooner. My focus going forward is not just to be a member, but to support. As they always say, membership has its privileges, right? So I'm going to leave you with my favorite quote, and that's from Dr. Martin Luther King, who says, the most important question is, what are you doing for others? This, I believe, is what the chamber is about. So to the president of the chamber, John Harmon, as well as his phenomenal team, I want to thank you for all that you have done for PG Health. I promise to pay it forward through support. So thank you guys for allowing me a small moment of your time today. I hope it's giving you some insight as to what the chamber can do for each of you as it is done for us. And I look forward to meeting the many members who are here today as well as other corporations. Thank you.
My name is Malik Murray, as John Harmon mentioned earlier, Senior Vice President, Institutional Marketing and Client Services at Aerial Investments. We are the first and largest African-American-owned investment firm in the world, founded by our CEO, John Rogers Jr., and our President, Melanie Hobson, who joined the firm in 1991. I want to kind of piggyback off some stats that Faye Combs from BG Health just shared, which I thought were just brilliant. When she said that 13% of the population of the state of New Jersey is African American, and the African American businesses are some of the fastest growing businesses among ethnic groups in the state and for the most part in the country. And the reason why I think that's important is because that's really the reason our firm was founded back in 1983. As you can look at our industry today, there are not many African Americans, quite frankly, managing money. And so you can think of how many, if they're not a lot now, there definitely weren't a lot back in 1983. And so for a firm that started back then to be managing $13.5 billion in assets, being able to say that our president, Molly Hobson, might be one of the most successful Black women leaders in corporate America. She's the vice chairman of Starbucks. She's joined the board of JP Morgan, and she's also on the board of Estee Lauder. Our firm is 100 employees. We're based in Chicago. We're proud to manage money on behalf of Fortune 100 companies that you're all aware of, such as Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Boeing, Chrysler. We were recently hired by PSA&G last year, so a very significant relationship for us. But the reason why I'm here succinctly is it's very rare for a chamber to get what we do and to really advocate and make introductions in the way that John Harmon has done thus far. When you talk about supplier diversity, the term I prefer, business diversity, people, when you talk about investments for that matter, it's like speaking a foreign language. And so for John to get us so quickly, but more importantly, to bring us into rooms and introduce us to the right people, specifically CFOs and treasurers and the like, has really been a big deal for our firm. And so we can't thank him enough for his leadership, his vision, but also his reach as it relates to advocating for businesses that are owned by Blacks across all areas of spend, which is very, very critical. I mean, the old economies, manufacturing, and stuff that we're very familiar with. The new economy, quite frankly, is professional services and technology. And our community has successful companies in all those areas of spend. So we thank you, John, for your leadership and your advocacy. You can always count on our support. And I know I'm staying right before lunch, so I'm going to make my comments here, and you'll see me a little bit later this afternoon on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you all for your involvement. It really meant a lot to me and the organization. For those of you who, before now, probably I don't know about the African American Chamber of Commerce, what they do. I'll let them share with you what we do, and we do it in the interest of everybody in this room. So today's program is all about partnerships. And today I've asked some of our partners to come to my city, and some of them are from this city, to share with you their value proposition and how they can help us do better. So without further ado, you've heard enough from me, you heard enough from my organization. Now let's hear from my partners. First, the president of our Trenton City Council, the Honorable Kathy McBride. A lady who needs no introduction. She came this morning from far North Jersey to be here. Ms. Jill Johnson. She is the CEO of Institute for Entrepreneur Leadership. And locally, the Chief of Staff of the City of Trenton, Mr. Yoshi Minali. Representing the county, Aaron Watson, Deputy County Administrator. Vice President Marketing and Communication for Greater Trenton, Mr. Brian Evans. We have our city and county representatives, and now from the state, my good friend, the former Commissioner of the Department of Labor, Dr. Andrew Kushner. He's now the president of the New Jersey Community College Consortium. Give them all a round of applause. So today we're going to take a seat, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk from a city administrative, city governance perspective. We're going to talk about workforce as it relates to programs from the state of New Jersey that could help folks get the skills that they need to be successful. From the county, we're going to talk about some of the economic development initiatives they've done and how we can get in the game. Brian is with Greater Trenton, who's really trying to drive development, getting more of the private sector involved. And Jill, we have a training program that is relatively no cost for small businesses for 16 weeks. And it's like offering up root canals to get people from this community to get on board. So we hope to change that today. And that's why I asked Jill to come. So, and we're going to ask each of you to just give a brief summary of who you are, a little bit about your organization. And then we're just going to talk about what you do on a daily basis to get at some of those challenges that we articulated earlier. And then we're going to get out of here. This is not going to be long, but these folks are professionals and they're going to be right to the point today. And hopefully we'll have a little Q&A at the end, and then we'll have the awards program on the other side. Always ladies first. Since you're hometown, Kathy, I'll start with you and go to Jill. Then I'll go to the doctor, Ann on the end, and then we'll work our way right on back to the city and close there.
Hi, good morning, everyone. And I would like to first thank Mr. Harmon and the African American Chamber of Commerce and the organization that Sam Frisbee has headed for inviting me out this morning. My name is Kathy McBride, and I'm the president of the City Council, and I would like to share with you this morning what the council's role is as far as the economic impact and opportunity for our city. The council has a role to play, and what we do is we review all contracts that come to the city through the administration. It is the council's job to follow the Faulkner's Act in reviewing the contracts, making sure that this administration gives us a complete packet of those contracts. So the council's job is to approve or disapprove any contract that the administration brings forward. That is the role that we play as the council for our economic growth in the city. The council also has a role as far as businesses is concerned. We grant all of the license, we grant the permits. The council have an obligation to the residents here in the city to make sure that when we grant a permit or we grant license for a project, that the residents in our city have a piece of that pie. What I have done in the past is, if we have not been able to be a part of the construction and the redevelopment of the city as far as the Section 3 compliance piece, which is a very important piece. The Section 3 piece says that if there's any federal dollars that is donated to a project that we have granted to take place in our city, we have the right to bring our residents onto that project. If our people aren't bought into that project, the council has a right to pull back as far as the license and the permits. So what I've done is I created an ordinance, and that ordinance reads that we need a Section 3 compliance officer, because we need someone to determine when our people are allowed to come on the site, take part in the projects. If they are not allowed to take part in the project, then the council have an obligation to say, we're not going to move forward with this. We're going to hold back on these licenses until you meet those requirements. The Section 3 piece is very important because it allows the residents in the city of Trenton to take place in the construction and the redevelopment in our community. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson, give her a hand, please.
I'm going to stand up because I like to be able to see everybody. John, thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Jill Johnson. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of the Institute for Entrepreneurial Leadership. My father and I started the organization together back in 2002. Some of you may be familiar with City News Publishing Company way back when. That was my parents' newspaper. They had their business for about 20 years. And that really led to was an impetus for this organization and the work that we do today as an organization. We see a lot of people, and we always, again, hear the statistic that the black community is starting businesses at a faster rate than anyone else. And we're really good at starting businesses. What has been not so good for us is growing and scaling those businesses and exiting from those businesses. And it was really sad for me when my parents, after 20 years, were not able to extract the value that they had created over all that time. They used to have these amazing events, and by many accounts, the business was doing well. But when they decided that they no longer wanted to run a weekly newspaper, they shut it down. They had, again, were not in a position to sell their business. Now, juxtapose that to the work that I did when I was at Goldman Sachs. I started my career in mergers and acquisitions in the analyst program, and I saw a lot of people who did not look like people from my community, who started businesses, grew those businesses, and sold those businesses for a lot of money. And when you really look at the issues around access to capital, it starts with or it is rooted in the wealth gap. And it's really the money, not even the bank money, the VC money that everyone talks about, but it's that friends and family money that we don't have. And so our focus as an organization right now, John mentioned the training program, and we do have that, but our real focus is around providing one-on-one support to businesses, working with partners like John to help to open doors. And when John opens those doors, we want to make sure that the businesses are ready to walk through those doors and take advantage of the opportunity. So a lot of our work is around the capacity building and helping the business to be ready for those opportunities. But where we're really focused right now is in the part of grow, scale, and exit. We want to see more businesses owned by people of color, and especially Black-owned businesses, exiting. So we're not necessarily working with the masses of businesses. We're looking for those that have that potential to grow, scale, and exit, so they can be the ones that are putting money back into the businesses to help then more businesses start with the capital that they really need to get on the path to growth. So I will stop there. And again, John, thank you so much for having me here.
Aaron?
Good afternoon. I'm Aaron Fichtner. I'm the president of the New Jersey Council of County Colleges. So I work with the 19 community colleges across the state to try to coordinate their work and strengthen their work and their impact. So it's I've had the privilege of working with John for the last 8 years when I was at the State Department of Labor, and now working with the community colleges, and it's an honor to be with this really distinguished panel and to be with you all here today. I think we all recognize how important education is for economic growth. And that's what our community colleges recognize. That's what we do every day, open up the doors of opportunity through education to more and more people in New Jersey. I think that's so critically important. I think all of the studies, all the data shows that there will be folks that don't have a high school education or have a high school education, no college, who can have good careers, but on average, most people are going to need some education after high school in order to have a good career and be able to have a business and be able to be successful and support their families. And that's what we're all about in the community colleges. We have about 320,000 people go to community colleges every year. Obviously, Mercer County Community College is the community college here in Mercer and Trenton. That's a really great institution led by President Wong, doing some really innovative work. And so I'm here to really start a conversation about what can we do to make sure more people get into college, get the education they need, that gets them a good job. Doesn't mean everyone's going to get a 4-year education or wants a 4-year education, but it's about getting people into programs that get them the skills, the credentials, the abilities that get them on a path to a career that is good. Many of you might know Governor Murphy campaigned on a promise of making community college free. So this semester, anyone in a household making less than $45,000 a year in New Jersey can go to community college for free. It's a huge step in the right direction. We hope that we can work with the Chamber and others to make sure that that investment stays and continues and expands. It is our hope that in the governor's budget that we'll get to a point where anyone in a household making less than $75,000 a year could go to community college for free. Think about the impact that that would have, the opportunities that would open up to people across our state, people here in Trenton. I think it's a huge opportunity and a huge thing that we need to do to invest in Trenton, invest in our state, invest in our future. We're also working very closely with our community colleges to make sure that they're offering programs that are connected to businesses. So really understanding where the economy is going and making sure that members of the chamber, members of the economy are able to hire people that have skills that can propel their businesses forward. So it's an incredible honor to be with you all today and to really start a conversation about what we can do in the community colleges to help contribute to this really important mission and important goal. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me here. I definitely appreciate being a part of this discussion. So I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Communications for Greater Trenton. And so several years ago, a group of stakeholders got together. They included folks like George Pruitt, from former president and CEO of Thomas Edison State University, included Pete Kasabak, folks like the late Karen Francini, who was very instrumental in starting Greater Trenton. They got together and they really began looking to the north, New Brunswick, and looking at DevCo, looking to the south of Camden, looking at Cooper's Ferry, and really scratching their heads, wondering why Trenton wasn't further along from an economic development perspective, considering that this is our capital city and that it's been neglected for so long. And so that was really the genesis of Greater Trenton. And so we are basically economic development marketing, and we help market the region. We also act as a collaborator, provide resources, a one-stop shop. So for anyone that's looking to either develop or invest in Trenton, that they can come to us. We work closely with the city, closely with the state to make it a smooth transition. So that's what we're all about. My particular background, prior to Greater Trenton, I was the Vice President of Communications for Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce. So we covered Mercer County and 10 other counties in South Jersey, northeastern PA, and also northern Delaware as well. So it was an 11-county region. Prior to that, I was the Director of Public Relations and Policy Communications for Select Greater Philadelphia, which is the business attraction arm of the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce. Boy, that's a mouthful. And then prior to that, I head up public affairs for an organization called the Alliance for Downtown New York, where right after the dust started settling from 9/11, trying to help companies that were considering going over the Hudson, like American Express and Merrill Lynch, try to convince them to stay in Lower Manhattan. That was everything south of Chambers Street. But again, very glad to be here, very glad to be a part of sort of Trenton's rebirth, and I'm happy to be a part of this discussion.
Mr. Watson?
Good morning, folks. My name is Aaron Watson. As stated earlier, I'm a native of Ewing Township, and I consider Trenton my home. It's been my home all my life. I've probably known John now 40 years.
Please.
Went to college together. First, let me say, just to be in this building, this warms my heart, because as Sam mentioned earlier, it had many lives before this, and one of them is Boys Club. I, in fact, was the director of this Boys Club from 1982 to 86, so I commend you for the work that you do here, Sam, in this beautiful building. I'm sort of on a little different side of the spectrum, because I'm the only one here that's really not representing sort of business or the legislative body. I'm on the administrative side. So basically what I can really speak to is sort of some of the work that we've done, certainly in collaboration with John and the African American Chamber of Commerce, relative to trying to get small businesses to do work within Mercer County. Just a little bit about my background. I came on the county executive staff in 2004 as Director of Transportation. About 4 years ago, I was elevated to Deputy Administrator, and I sort of have the yin and the yang of the county, right? So I have the infrastructure department to oversee the engineering department, the airport, the highway department, and all those things, but I also oversee the quality of life stuff with the parks department. So it's kind of, it's pretty a cool paradigm for me. As far as opening up for work, right? In the county, as you well know, just like with the city, there are very strict rules by which you can do business with the county. The county executive is certainly trying to make a concerted effort in diversifying the things that we're doing, recognizing that not everyone's at the table. And certainly with the help that we have of our very capable freeholder board, and Sam's been working on this diligently, we've now worked with John to try to figure out how can we get more people at the table of color. One of the things that we've done, we've adopted an ordinance back in July of 2018 that specifies that 10% of the work, 10% of the goods, 10% of the services will now go to minority firms. The county executive is now taking an additional step by hiring a business coordinator, a business outreach coordinator by the name of James Chambers, who will be conducting a disparity study as we speak to figure out, well, where are we lacking and how can we do better? So there's really a concerted effort to do that. As far as me, I have my own internal maintenance staff, right? But we can't do everything. So when we get to the point where we're overwhelmed, then we must go out and procure services. In order for us to do that, obviously there's a process as a state, right? So here's how the process works. Up until like $6,000, I can go ahead and hire, say, John's Plumbing, for instance. No problem, no one questions. Anything over $6,000, I have to give 2 quotes, right? 6,000 to 17,000, I have to give 2 quotes. I can go ahead and select some. After $17,000, now, unless you got a qualified purchasing agent on board, right? You have to then put this out to bid, right? So what the county has done, the county has done a couple of things. First of all, we did have a qualified purchasing agent. We're in the process of getting another, but until then, our freeholder board is trying to hire an outside firm, which makes sense. So we do have the ability to then, go ahead and have some of this work up to $40,000 be handled in-house without going out to bid. This sort of assures that we can get other folks to the table, right? So we are anxious that moving forward, there's going to be plenty of work out here for folks. It's just a matter of how do we get them in. So I'm going to wrap my remarks up with this. Right now, we're about to undertake probably arguably the biggest capital improvement project this county has ever seen. Certainly with the support of our freeholder board, we intend to build a new airline terminal. Now, I hope that I have the support of the folks in this room, because I think arguably this is the most important thing that can happen to us from an economic development standpoint in the county. With that said, that terminal project is probably going to be in all about $100 million. About 75 of that's going to be vertical development, meaning, there's going to be, a terminal that's built, there's going to be a garage that's built, and then there's going to be all the other ancillary infrastructure that needs to be built, right? So while the federal government only has like a 3%, that's basically all that they have in terms of minority participation is guaranteed. We're taking it a step further, just as we do with our bridge projects. Our bridge projects, anytime I send out a bridge project for design, I stipulate that there must be at least 16% minority participation in that project. We're trying to step that game up as it relates to what's going to happen at the airport as well. So again, I think this is all important. It does not seem like it's a lot, but let me put it in perspective for you. In Mercer County alone, there are about 300,000 people. 50.2% of them are white. 19.8% of them are black. 17.9% of them are Latino, and the rest are Asian and others. It's about time to get a little closer to having a pie.
Absolutely.
Again, thank you.
Before we go to Yoshi, I just want to pick up on something that Mr. Watson said that you may have missed or didn't totally connect the dots. The federal goals, the more we participate, the higher the goals are. So when you get low goals, particularly on the federal procurement side, it's because our participation rate is low. So when they're asking you to register as a disadvantaged business, that's kind of a race-neutral category. But if we participate more, you can elevate the goals. Why have high goals and low participation? It's a new point. So today's information, we must take it and act upon it. Otherwise, we're just out here on a Saturday in the cold, this hot room having a conversation, right? Yoshi.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Yoshi Manali, and thank you for the American Chambers of Commerce for inviting me. My name is Yoshi Manali. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Mayor. We have just a little background about me. I used to work for the New York City Mayor's Office of Contract Services, where I was doing procurement reform. A big part of the Mayor's Office there's objective was creating a 30% set aside for MWBEs. Just so you can understand, like, New York City spends about $16 billion on just stuff. And they were looking at spending at least $4 to $5 billion toward minority and women business enterprises. At the time, they were doing about $1.5 billion. So this was an ambitious goal by the city. that set-aside program is an important part of what my knowledge is to coming to Trenton. We want to work with the county. We want to create an office, which we're probably planning on doing, and hiring similar to what the county's been doing, creating that sort of set-aside program. We might be a little bit more ambitious. Again, it's that setting a higher goal, but not knowing, again, it would be a goal. A goal would probably be about 30%. Same thing as New York City does. If New York, if it's good enough for New York City, why wouldn't it be good enough for Trenton? So that's the goal. We will have a registration program. We're going to change the way all of our contracts are, when you register for a contract, to have a portion of that that talks about what percentage of your business is MWBE, what percentage of your subcontractors. Again, we want to make this encouragement. Tell us who you are. So again, for us, it will give us this knowledge. What is our current state? And then how do we get into this better state? Plus, working with the county, and I think that's something that we've talked about, is having not a one-stop, I don't know what we'll call it, but a center where a contractor can go and not only work with the city, but work with the county on a number of these set-aside programs. We'll put also our UEZ office in there. We'll put on some of our other businesses, offices in this special place. So again, you can go to one place as a contractor, and how do you get registered? How do you get part of a lot of our set-aside programs? Sort of give you this knowledge as a local business owner. How do you get into the city contracting? Because that's one of the biggest deterrents, is that I think a lot of our local contractors just don't understand how to register, how to get involved, because the money's there. It's just a matter of getting into it. So that's one of the commitments on this side, obviously on the MWE side. On the entrepreneurship side, the city has been really looking on economic development from a neighborhood perspective. John and I have spoken a couple times on how do you build from the neighborhood up, of looking at neighborhoods, and it's something that's with the guidance of our council president, is designating people as redevelopers. You've designated areas of redevelopment, and then especially nonprofits and others, and saying, how are you going to help this neighborhood? And how are you going to guide its future? The city just doesn't have the resources to look everywhere, so we just don't have the personnel. But if we turn to our partners to help guide us, they can then take that role on. We're hopefully working with the African American Chamber of Commerce on one of those projects in the city and saying, what is your vision for this area? The whole city, instead of having everybody spread out all over the city, having one project here, having a house here, having a business here, how do you concentrate your efforts, and now have the best value? And that's how we're sort of looking at the city. We've spoken in a number of ways of also looking around the farm. There's other neighborhoods in this place, in the Trenton, and that's where we sort of see it. It's a neighborhood-based city. And why not build it from those neighborhoods? Bring back those neighborhoods, those entrepreneurships, those businesses, small businesses that were here before, instead of having them spread everywhere. Because again, if you consolidate, it makes it a lot easier. We've talked about even downtown, which is a very important partner, which is the state. There's these big, huge projects that are going to work on with the state, which is behind the Labor Building, those parking lots. Again, those are huge projects. Those are $100 million projects. But on a smaller scale, we're going to look at Warren Street. Warren Street has small businesses already, except half the businesses are closed. And then if you look in the area, there's a lot of vacant properties. So let's concentrate there, and how does the city help those businesses and other businesses move into that area? How do we encourage it? How do we create more, vibrant atmosphere? So again, if you start there, it can start to spread. Again, instead of spreading around the whole city, the city wants to concentrate on certain neighborhoods, and that's how we want to look at economic development and entrepreneurship especially, and it's really guiding local contractors to have those opportunities and find that investment. So that's where we are on the, obviously, the job side and also well as the entrepreneurship side.
Good. Give them a hand. Give them all a hand. So, I want you all to think about some questions. I'm going to have some questions for the panelists. But today also is about dispelling false perceptions. Because we have a lot of false perceptions and foolishness in this town. And this is a big Facebook town, right? So we should be Facebooking about this information that's being disseminated that I perceive is accurate today versus the other stuff that we're chatting about from 9 after dark. So let's try to level set today, right?
Tell it, John.
I want to follow up on something President McBride said, and so Brian, I'm going to come right to you to talk about the value proposition from your organization. But I want to just expand on what the councilwoman said. She talked about Section 3. Section 3 was a part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and it's one of the most powerful pieces of legislation that Dr. King and others crafted. And this comes right at the Trenton Housing Authority. and community development block grant money that comes into the city. The law reads something like this: 3%, 10%, and 30%. 3% of all professional services supposed to be allocated. Any development project that takes place in the city or that has community development block grant money or the housing authority. 3% of all the professional services supposed to go to Section 3 businesses first. So these are residents of public housing who can get self-certified and have a business. They're supposed to be first in line. The second group is 10% of all contracts. 10%. So I understand, and although I didn't get notified, like these men and women are notifying me about this $20 million that the housing authority is already contracted out. I'm right here in town, I got no word of it. That shouldn't happen, right? But $20 million, 10%, that's $2 million off the top across the board. 30% of all the new hires. 30%. So if a job calls for 100 new jobs, 30%, 30 of those jobs are supposed to go right across to, that's the law, right? And if we're not in compliance with the law, you can file a non-compliant Section 3 claim and go right to federal court. As a city, as a community, we gotta hold folks accountable, right? And I hear whispers, but I'm speaking facts, right? Because these folks, we're talking, we talk and we work, but we gotta do a better job in the city if we wanna eat, right? So, Brian, I'm gonna talk to the folks here about Greater Trenton and why is it important to have an organization like yours in Trenton, and what you're trying to do on behalf of this revitalization of the city.
Oh, absolutely. So, I mentioned before, there's been no city that's been successful without an organization like this. And for years, Trenton had nothing. And so, again, when we look at DevCo and New Brunswick, DevCo didn't start out as big as it was. But through collaborations with the state and the city, they grew and they made it happen. And so it's one of the reasons why Greater Trenton was formed, similar to Cooper's Ferry and Camden, and quite frankly, similar to Selectmen in Philadelphia. Which, although it covers a wider region, it's pretty much the same concept. So going back to your comment about perception and reality, one of the things that I've learned through my experience is that you can have a city that's doing really great, that's doing a lot of positive things, but if the media and the narrative doesn't reflect that, it's just not going to be sustainable. It's not going to be, and that's what I see happening in Trenton right now. And it's one of the reasons why back in September we actually launched a publication called Trenton Daily, which I hope you're all part of. If you're not, I'll sign you all up. But it talks about a narrative of Trenton from a lens of opportunity and progress, as opposed to all the negative things that people think are happening in the city. Sure, Trenton has its issues, just like any other urban city of its type and its population, but I got to tell you, there are way more positive things happening than people know about.
Right.
And so that's one thing that we strive to do as an economic marketing piece of Greater Trenton. But also, to your point, the left hand has to know what the right hand's doing. And so we actually did a landscape of workforce development to see what's going on here in terms of who's working on what. And there are, we do not have a lack of workforce development programs. It's just that I don't think everyone knows about it. I don't think that we're coordinating hand in hand. Mercer County Community College is doing some great things. YMCA doing some fabulous things. I recently visited the Art Prep program for Princeton University, where they take a group of Trenton High School students and expose them to the world of architecture and design. And I got to tell you, that it is amazing what these kids are doing. They're actually designing buildings. One of the kids that I spoke to is actually designing a building shaped like a guitar. And I mean, he did all the work and all the engineering behind it and all the research that goes with it. Who knows about this? No one knows this is going on. And so that's one of the things that we strive to do as an organization as we promote the assets of this region, promote the assets of Trenton. When I came aboard about a little over a year ago, I put together the Amazon proposal to attract Amazon here, their second headquarters. Obviously, we came in 21 of the top 20, so we didn't make the cut.
That's great. Give him a hand. So share with, and then we're going to go to Dr. Fisher next.
Yep.
Share with the audience how you're now using the Amazon proposal to attract folks to the city.
Exactly. So little did we know when we put together this 115-page proposal to try to attract Amazon here, that actual piece would now become sort of a marketing guide for Trenton and how we promote Trenton to the business community. And so that's exactly what it's become. And it's really doing its part as a tool to attract investment here. So it's one of the things that we obviously redacted it, took all references to Amazon out, but it really is a very innovative concept. It's very ambitious, but it shows the city in a light that people just don't see. And so
hey,
it's
John, on your point about DevCo and Cooper's Ferry,
yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what are the differences in Trenton with those two communities, such as, New Brunswick has Johnson & Johnson, they have a big university.
I think that's
Camden has, industry there. Trenton, and it's either a burden or a benefit being the state capital because we have the state, we have government. And we really don't have that major, that major for-profit company or corporation sitting here. And what's the impact of that?
Very good point. And so, absolutely, Camden it's a university town. New Brunswick is a university town. Trenton, while we do have, 5 anchoring institutions of higher education, it's not really a town that draws students. And so, but when we were putting the Amazon proposal together, one thing that we learned was that we checked off every single box that Amazon was looking for in terms of mass transit, in terms of having a storied riverfront, in terms of having arts and culture here, none like any other. We've got roadways and access, highway access, and so when you look at that, there are cities that wish they had what we have. And don't. And so I think that I think Trenton definitely has a different path to economic development than Camden does or New Brunswick, but we certainly have a path. And so, but that's a great point.
I think this sets up Aaron perfect for workforce and private investment. But I want to add a few more anecdotes as it relates to economic development here in the city. I'm shaking my head because nothing I say is personal. Right? I'm just going to state facts, and the facts are going to land somewhere in this room, right? So we have Torcon that's doing a $125 million office building, and we have Turner Construction, a $125 million office building here in this town. So we got to figure out how do we leverage the talent in this community to benefit from those projects, or how do we Manny Jackson leveraged in one way, right? Gus Hindenburg leveraged in another way in Newark. If we remain silent, the status quo will prevail, right?
That's right.
In addition, Mercer County, West Windsor campus is about to do $100 million expansion. I'm up to $300 million right now, right? 200 is in this city proper. Trenton Board of Education, and Gene is working with me on this. They have a $300 million budget. They spend $100 million per year on goods and services. 100 million, so we're up to 400 million in goods and services, right? I left the budget out. But Brother Watson gave us some insight on, he said, just on his word or his reference, probably do about a $6,000 contract, and then $6,000 to $17,000, you need some quotes. But these are opportunities for some of the smaller businesses. If he can do it, the other folks can do it as well, right?
That's right.
So we got to think about that and how we get ourselves in the narrative. And last thing before we go to Dr. Fishner, sometimes we get caught up on construction in terms of the bricks and mortar. But there's a lot of things that go into a building. You got to think about that. While the building's going up, people eat. People, you can market them to your stores and what have you, right? There's phones that have to go in. There's furniture. There's paint. There's a lot of things, but you got to think sometime, how can your business play in these construction and not just get caught up on the bricks and mortar? So going to Dr. Fisher, the point I want to make is, although Trenton may not align with all the other ancillary things that other communities have, I think workforce is an attractive component for anybody, right?
That's right.
So speak to why that is important for this city to get our workforce to another level, and how you get involved with that.
Yeah, that is so important. I think if we're going to take advantage in Trenton of any of these opportunities, we got to make sure that everyone who lives here has the skills to be able to get on that path to those jobs. And Brian is 100% right. A lot of great workforce efforts in Trenton, and they are uncoordinated, right? And so I think we would welcome the community colleges, and I saw this when I worked at the State Department of Labor. We need to do a better job of coordinating those programs. And so maybe there's an opportunity for the community college to work with Greater Trenton and others to find out, how do we work those together? How do we get them all aligned so that there is that path and that connection, because there's a lot of wasted effort, right? So I welcome that opportunity for that conversation, because it is so important. And I think we need to do a better job of strengthening the partnerships between Trenton High School and the community college to make sure that high school students are getting college credit when they're in high school. That we got a lot of great models around the state. There's some good partnerships already underway, but I think there's a lot more that we can do through those conversations. So I think it's all really about partnerships, and the community colleges are ready to have those discussions. I'll take it, we recognize that a lot of people who go to community college, the cost isn't just tuition and fees. That's a big thing, right? And we're excited that the governor's big on that. The cost of going to community college is food, right? It's transportation, it's childcare. And I think, we've been trying to expand our partnerships with everything from food pantries to other social service agencies to make sure that students who commit to go to community college don't drop out because they need to take a second part-time job to pay for food. So I think it's really all about partnerships, and I think there's a lot of great efforts already underway, and we need to figure out how to leverage them. I want to say one thing about having worked in the state for a long time, and I know this gentleman's point about Trenton not being New Brunswick, right? But we do have the state. The state doesn't pay taxes, but there are a heck of a lot of people who come to Trenton every day, and if we can figure out a way to get them to spend their money here, get them out of the state buildings, get them out of the state building cafeterias onto Warren Street to eat at local restaurants. And so I would encourage us to continue a dialogue with state leadership, with the governor, about how can the state be a better partner in Trenton's growth and future. I think that those conversations are underway, but they need to be ramped up.
I agree, and I think these two buildings going up, taxation and health and human services, I believe the cafeterias won't be in these buildings. So that's a plus. We're going to come to you guys. I want to give everyone a couple more comments and get your questions ready. Mr. Watson.
I'm sort of hearing the doctor speak, and what came to mind to me was, and I appreciate and applaud the fact that we're opening up these community colleges, and we certainly need to make opportunities. And believe me, Mercer County is one of my alma maters, and it's a turning point. Yes, it's a turning point for a lot of folks' lives. But I really think we need to also be thinking about this differently in a way that also incorporates the vacation. Right? Because, right now, we have young engineers that come work for us and work for my engineering department, and I will tell you, some of them are saying if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't, because they're so underwater in debt that the salaries just can't keep up. And the truth be told is, there's a wealth of opportunity for artisans out here, right? So even the guys that work for, like, my buildings and grounds, we drive the park, how much you guys pay for a good plumber, right? Sometimes you can't get a good plumber now at the time. Not everybody can be Ed Hill, or Tracy. At the end of the day, we need to get these folks trained in some of those fields that are really applicable to what's out there opportunity-wise. So it's just not always about college. So that would be one of my observations, because I think that's
Good point.
I think we 100% agree with that. I think the community college leaders agree that it's not about a 2-year degree for everybody that's going to perhaps not get them on a path to a better job. And I think if you look at what our community colleges are offering increasingly, they're offering programs that are not just academic programs with our vocations. So I think 100% agree with that point. And it's about preparing people for jobs that get them a good career, whatever that is, whether it's in arts, whether it's in construction, whether it's in manufacturing.
And I appreciate him saying,
Go
I
ahead.
just want to sort of wrap up.
No, you guys are getting into it now. This is good.
And certainly this was no affront. Yeah. At the end of the day, I know when I went to Mercer County back in 1981, there were very few curriculums that came out that made money, right? You get your associate's degree, pretty much you had to go on to your bachelor's to make some money. Unless you were in the mortuary science field, unless you were in culinary arts, it may have been nursing. And then computer sciences, that was just coming out. But like for folks that are going to get their apprenticeships to become artisans, whether they're carpenters, plumbers, or otherwise, these folks get the opportunity to make their money. But you know what one of the barriers is that they can't get into the union. It's so daggone generational that people of color don't traditionally have an opportunity to get there. And I think that conversation needs to be had in terms of opening up doors and opportunities.
So Mr. Watson, Yoshi, we're coming to you, right? So mark that point. Opportunities in your community and you can't participate. That's ridiculous. When folks come from all other communities, Princeton, Lodge, and they eat here, right? And they take your money and underwrite their lifestyles elsewhere. We got to deal with that. And so we're going to close with you, President McBride, but think about how we deal with that. We don't want to have walls in our city, but nonetheless, we want to have some reciprocity where that we can benefit from the economic development that is occurring in our community, pro rata share. It can't be a zero-sum game. Trent High School, $150 million investment. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, Yoshi.
Well, I just wanted to sort of like talk about Mercer County College and the opportunities that we should be looking at. I think it was one of your speakers in one of your videos that talked about the cannabis. It's something that's coming to the state, depending on when. I mean, it's supposed to happen last November, hopefully any day soon. The city of Trenton was one of the few cities that has passed a medical marijuana incentive program to encourage investment in the city. We have space where a number of companies are looking at and trying to invest in the city. We've talked to Mercer County because they understand that's the future as well, creating these horticulture programs, creating these programs. Again, a lot of these companies, I know that Council President McBride went down to Baltimore to see a facility. A lot of those jobs, they're not requiring a bachelor's degree. They're not even requiring a master's. They're requiring an associate's degree, high school, because again, they train you. Because it's even though it's high tech, it's still training. Because you can't teach these things at school. School haven't been teaching these kind of programs. So that's something that I know that Mercer County Community College is looking at doing, because I know in Ewing, they already have one already going in. They won one of the 6 licenses. And the next round, we're hoping that Trenton will be able to get one of those licenses. So again, we'll have a region where that kind of industry is coming. And those are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of jobs.
Pay good money.
And pay very good money. And we've seen what's happened in other states where people started at the bottom, and they have worked their way up. And that's something that we're looking forward to encourage. On the union side, that is something, you're absolutely right. That's something that the mayor has talked about too. We're reaching out to, with the assembly offices, reaching out to our building trains and saying, we want you to be part of this, the community. We want to participate in some of these bigger projects that they have, but you need to give back to the city too. You need to create these entrepreneurship programs, these apprenticeship programs. I know that the Commissioner of Labor has told us, he said there's a lot of money out there to help them pay for those apprenticeship programs, and he said he wants Trenton to have those programs as well. So I think we're starting that conversation with our assemblywomen and our assemblymen on how to really develop those programs for the city. So again, we say, okay, we want you to be here, and we know that you're an important part of the state, but then you also have to give back to us too. You have to create those opportunities. They can't just go to the Hamiltons and the Ewings and Lawrences and the other parts of the county where it tends to be a lot of those jobs are. You need to start creating those jobs here too, or these opportunities. Again, you're right, a plumber, I mean, I don't know if anybody else here, when you call a plumber, it's $300 an hour, you know, they're making good money, and people tend to forget that. Yeah.
So let me put a point on this, the union piece in terms of the law. Several years ago, I was president of the Metro Trenton African American Chamber of Commerce, and this is on the heels of the school construction initiative. We negotiated with the state, Governor McGreevey at that time, who his first executive order was project labor agreements on all public contracts. As a result, it drove the price up to do public work. But we were able to strike a deal where on project labor agreements, the threshold is $5 million now. So in other words, any project under $5 million, it does not have to be a union, okay? You have to pay prevailing wage, but we notice in some specs in municipalities, they're still using project labor agreement language. So we're educating the community that we have to be mindful of that. And Councilwoman, keep an eye on that because it could be codified in some of the docs. But so $1 million project, $2 million project, it doesn't have to be union. And so we have to take advantage of that window of opportunity. So Jill, for you, talk a little bit about how you work to get businesses to that next level. We'll close with the President of Council. We'll open up for questions, but we're still ahead of schedule in terms of time.
Great.
Get your questions ready.
So I actually want to shift my comments a little bit to focus on how do we get participation up? Because what we see oftentimes is kind of these fairs and they're matching, and it's the companies or the agencies on one side. We have these opportunities. Everyone comes, sign up on a list. Lots of people show up, sign up on a list, say they want to do work, and then there's no work that gets done and no contracts that happen, et cetera. And I think overall, where we're falling out on this is there has to be a greater intentionality about inclusion. It is just not sufficient to talk about we want to do better, we want to have more. It actually has to happen, and we have to be more intentional about thinking in everything that we do, how are we including Black-owned businesses? And it can be contract, it doesn't have to be procurement. It can be, again, just getting people out onto the street to buy their lunch on the street. So it doesn't just have to be through the traditional procurement channels. We need more people to do more business with more Black businesses.
Period.
Period. When you look at, so even the concept here of the newspaper, the Trenton piece, when my parents started their business, it was Plainfield Today to address that same issue that was going on in Plainfield. You know, the question that I would encourage you all to think about is, you know, how do you maybe partner with a Black-owned newspaper or publisher that's in the area and actually create that as a business opportunity? When we look, you know, what is it that we can do? What is it that we can do to actually create businesses? And when I talk about being intentional, we don't have the luxury of organic growth. We are too far behind to just leave it to how we develop. We don't have enough capital, we don't have the resources, we don't have the contacts and connections. So the intentionality comes in making the decision that we are going to create these businesses, and that then the city and other institutions and agencies will put the money and the resources around them because that's what's necessary. What we see in many communities, is yes, there's the opportunity to start a business. There's not the density, not the traffic, so those early adopters who go in end up using up all their capital and failing because the city's not yet ready for it. And then when the people come in, when the new units are there, when there are more employees, the Black businesses are gone because they used up their resources trying to beat the early adopters. So just organic development does not work. It has to be very intentional. And it's, again, not across the board. It's where really you pick a couple of the rising stars or those that have the greatest potential, and we get behind those people with the potential. And we actually make them successful. It's not waiting and seeing if they can be successful. We make them successful, and that's really how inclusion happens and how the whole economic development piece can actually have some teeth.
Wow, that was great. Give her a hand. Well, Madam Councilwoman, you've heard a lot of the discussion and some of the best practices that could be adopted, but the city council, and I know there's a lot of personalities and this and that going on, but at the end of the day, the citizens of this city are relying on you all to be not only the checks and balances, but also being able to be a little flexible, because we're trying to get folks to develop in the city that has underperformed for a long time, and from an investment standpoint, that's an opportunity, and sometimes they may want it on the cheap too, because it's been, because of what it is. So your role and the role of your college is critically important, how we are perceived in society in terms of engaging these folks and then working through the process, but also it's an important role in making sure we're not taken advantage of. So with that said, I want you to give us a few of your thoughts. And then we want some real questions from these amazing folks up here.
Well, what the city council has done based on the redevelopment is we went out and asked our law department to assign us a redevelopment attorney. So that redevelopment attorney can walk us through the process of dealing with the developers that want to come into Trenton. So we don't want to be undersold. We don't want to appear like we're too strict. We want to go by the law, but we want to be walked through the process so that we'll get it right. We can't afford to do business like we did in the past. The business has to be done correct, and we have to be able to say to the people that want to come into Trenton to do the business with us, how are you going to partner with the city of Trenton? What are you going to offer the city of Trenton? And so we have a redevelopment attorney on board with us to walk us through the process. We have also, we have a problem going on in the city that we're dealing with right now is a prime example. The example is that we have the Roebling complex, and we have a lot of property, historical property in our city that we can actually sell. But because of the perception of Trenton, people want to come in and give us crumbs for some of the most valuable land on the East Coast. We have a waterfront that we're about to expand on and build up. So we can't allow people to just come in and say, I'm going to give you $80,000 for the most expensive piece of property that we have in the city. So the council has to have leadership, but before we can move on any sales of any property here in Trenton, I have asked the administration to please get us a housing and economic director, because that is the person that will drive that engine along with our attorney. So we're working with the city administration. We want the best housing and economic director that we can get, and with our attorney, we want to do business, but we want to do it right. We want to get it right. And in doing business, that's where that other piece comes in at with the Section 3 piece, making sure that the people in our city have a piece of the pie. We've let a lot of money walk out of this city with development, the Rush Crossing project. Listen, I took $1,200 out of my own pocket working with the African American Chamber of Commerce to bring an expert in here to teach the contractors what they needed to do with that Section 3 piece, with that development piece. Now the Dolly Homes is about to put out a lot of money for a redevelopment project. We have projects here. There's a lot of money to be made here in the city, but the council have to do their due diligence to make sure that that money stays here in this city. We can't allow a $205 million project to come up in this city and only $5 million to be left on the table in the city of Trenton. It's unacceptable. So what are we doing? We have the redevelopment attorney. We are working with the administration to bring on a housing and economic development director. But the council has to work as a body. When I ran for this position, when people asked me what was the most important thing that we could do as the council has to work as a body. You have to lay your personal feelings aside because you are representing 84,000 people, and you have to work together because nothing can get done unless you have 4 votes. You have to lay your personal feelings aside and be ready to do business for the city. And my job is to make sure that money is left in the city for the residents. And I just want to share with all of you before I wrap this up is that what I did along with Councilwoman Marge and Jarrell, we pressed the administration for the water department to put that job fair on. We took out of the council's budget, which has never been done before, and ran ads in the Trentonian newspapers for those jobs. We got 100 and some odd job applications for the job fair. Mr. Manali can speak to that. But from the ads that the council ran, we had 150 applications turned in. We have talent in our city. Don't let nobody tell you that we don't. We had engineers coming to the job fair. We had chemists coming. So we have talent here. Don't let anybody tell you any different. If you give them the opportunity to apply for these positions, you will be surprised of the talent that we have here in our city. And so as a council person, our job is to try to leverage for the residents of the city as much as we can. But in order to do that, we have to lay myself, Caldwell Wilson, Blakely, all 7 of us, we have to lay our personal feelings aside and do the work that you voted for us to do. And I'm going to wrap it up with that.
All right, give them a round of applause. All right, here we go. The lovely lady there. Then I come to you, Ed, and then the gentleman back there in the blue. Questions, no statements. Let's hit the questions.
Just a little context.
A little context. No statements.
Really,
Statements.
just a little context.
Okay.
I just want to follow up on Jill Johnson's commentary about the training effort and the coordination effort. Because I'd like to see us be able to connect the dots. We have all of the puzzle pieces that are necessary, but it seems to me that what we really need is like an inventory of the economic opportunity that exists here. John, you mentioned like $400 million worth of development. I don't know if that includes the airport, but clearly somewhere between four. It did. Okay, so at least $400 million worth of development. But what I'm wondering is it possible for this body of people to create a list, like literally an inventory of economic opportunity that is divided between employment opportunity and small business opportunity? And what I mean by that is very specific, like job titles when it comes to employment opportunity, and business enterprise when it comes to the business opportunity. Meaning, so, you say you've got all these jobs coming into the airport, for example. So what does that mean? That means uniforms. It means meals served for the airplanes. It means, various kinds of specific enterprise opportunities. That way, when the public asks, well, so what can I do? We have this inventory to say, oh, well, wait a minute, maybe what I can do is the 2 buildings that are going up, Turner and the other one, they're going to need security. Well, MCC has a great security training program. that program provides a 2-year degree where somebody can actually start at $55,000 at the end of that degree program to go in and get one of those jobs. So that's what I'm saying.
That's good. So why don't I offer this up for consideration? Jointly, the chamber, the city, and the county, as far as this is, for now, it's the chamber, the city, and the county, as far as the 2 Turner construction buildings, right? We send a letter jointly inviting them to come, and then as we get further with the county on this project, and then let them speak to us directly, right? And I think we'll get at that, but in the interim, we can start to get an inventory of the opportunities. That's what she's saying.
John.
So we can work on that.
Just in context, that's part of what James Chambers' job is, so that's why he was invited, he had another component.
Get focused.
So when you speak to that, of all those different levels, he's there to parse that out for folks. There's also in the ordinance a component for education, right? Because that whole speak that the chief of staff spoke to, where people really don't understand what the options that are out there, he's there to do that as well.
So in terms of the Turner and the Torcon buildings, since they've already started, so we need to get a letter to them like yesterday saying, all right, put the brakes on them. We need to bring them in and have a conversation now. But when we do this, ladies and gentlemen, what do we have to do? We got to show up, right? Okay. So that's one thing that we're going to do. That's an action item. Yeah, we got to show up.
John, can I just add something to that though? What she's talking about though on the small business side is that piece about being intentional. So in knowing the opportunities that are coming down the pipeline, being able to look at the capacity requirements of the existing businesses to also say, can anyone handle this on their own, or do we partner together and help them work together? So it's understanding what's there and what's required to get it and actually do the work.
Yep. Exactly. No, I agree with you. And then the gentleman in the blue.
I have a question for the gentleman.
Now, Ed, go ahead.
No. When you talk about the governor with the free college tuition, now I know if you have a felony, are you still qualified for that? Because I know with Pell Grants, once you have a felony, you're not allowed to get the funding, which is a major barrier. So the large population that we're talking about that need training and education have a stupid barrier which increases recidivism rate because if they can't get educated to get a proper job, they got to go do what they do and then they go right back in. And can we look at saying, if it costs almost, for a repeat offender, almost $65,000 a year to keep them incarcerated, where that you can go to Princeton on that dime. So we're spending the same money. So when we really start talking about the big pimp in the room, it's the prison industry that's sucking the money out. So if we use that money properly for wraparound services, where you take care of child care, daycare, and a stipend to train. So you ask somebody to go get trained, but they still got to eat every day. And $50 in a food stamp card is not going to cut it. So we got to look at the holistic aspect, because the money is in there, but how do we break it out and use it properly?
So I think, Ed, before our legislators got to codify the law so it makes sense. So I saw the Assemblywoman making notes, but I think this is the conversation over here, but you make a good point.
So I 100% agree with everything you said. I believe that someone with a felony would be able to get through community college, but I'll check with that, because I know you're right about Pell, but federal, but I think state may be different. But if it's not different, I think we all need to join together and try to change that, because that would make absolutely no sense. So let's commit to trying to do that. I think it's also really important that when people are in prison, that we are providing them with training and education so that they are prepared when they do get out. We don't do enough of that, and we are pushing to do more of that through the community colleges. So we'd love to keep this conversation going and find out how we can change this whole dynamic around.
I got you. Yes, sir.
My name is Ellison McCall. I was born here in Trent, in McKinley Hospital. Let's talk about Trent. Many problem not seen in Trent. People want to forget they come from Trent. All y'all up there started right here in Trent. Mercer County Community College, Trent Junior College, bus company, wherever. Mercer County Highway Department right down Brunswick Avenue. Bus company on East State Street. Trenton Junior Rider College out by Grand School. All that started right here. It left too fast. It took too much out. The city's too fast. You got to put something back. You owe your mama and daddy something, Trenton, New Jersey. Don't keep all of it for yourself. Your progress in the city is not progress. Bring back some programs for these people. Bring back some of that money for these people. The state got to do more. City council was arguing the other day about the water. Running water lines out in the township. Mercer County, I'm going to say township, say Mercer County. The program is not for the residents from Trenton that's sitting here, it's for the county. Put new services out there for them out to keep saving money from out their pocket. Why the city council got to argue about it? Why the state and the county argue about some of this money? Not the city council. Where's your sewer tax? You ain't paying none of that. But you want the water line. City council, people right here got to pay sewer tax. You want water and don't want it, you ain't got a sewer line out there. You pay no tax back here to these people. County and city got to get to the state, got to get together and do more for the people of Trenton. Don't forget your parents where you come from. You come from here. Trenton, New Jersey, a model city for the United States. It was. To your left. Didn't have but one high school, Hamilton. You and Lawrence didn't have nothing. Look at it now. Look at all the money out there. And now they're dying coming back here. Who asked for it? This won't stop.
Thank you. We'll work on it. All right, Bill.
Just, I think to remind, so the state, the 5 colleges in the area collaborated with the city on an innovation grant, which they won for about $100,000 from the state to start developing. And again, they're looking at developing a place in the city where all 5 colleges can put innovation to create a center, so that they can put their students back in here, to encourage them to be here, to create innovation, entrepreneurship. And then from there, hopefully those people, who knows what kind of company comes out of those 5, and maybe they will stay here, because that's what usually happens. You build your company, maybe a Princeton grad or a Rider grad decides to build a new innovative project, and then they open up their company here. Again, we want to give that and have that center here. And so that's what we've been working on with the state and trying to encourage that. So those colleges come back to the state.
Hey, John, I just wanted to fall back to a comment you made about on $200 million of construction or $300 on these public projects, that's more than just the bricks and mortar, it's all those other services. So is there any prohibition in government requiring these larger contractors to keep some sort of data collection on how much money they spend in these communities while they're doing this work? How many times do they feed their employees from a food service place within that community? How many times have they used, somebody said, security? How many times have they brought in temporary fencing? Whatever any of those services are, and how many people have they brought in that live within those communities, are working, and put them into some sort of training and apprenticeship program? So is there a way of putting that as part of the contract so that they have to report that out to you on a regular basis?
Bill, I like the suggestion. We have an African American firm that has the software capability, technology to capture that. We had some earlier discussions with the previous administration. We haven't talked to you all about it. But that's a conversation we can have. That way you can maximize the economic impact. So I'll follow up with you on that right here.
Okay. My name is Ethel Jones, and I've been in the city of Trenton for 18 years. Okay. All right, so I've seen the decline in the city. And I'm very upset with our city council at this particular time because of the fact that the council people that are supposed to be representing the different parts of the city, the different parts of our city council are thorough. You don't have to have $1 million to clean it up. Our city is not inviting any other companies to come into this terrible city. And it's not so much the people,
It's the grounds, it's the dirt, it's the filth, it's the buildings that are down, okay? See, when you want your city, and you want people to come into your city, you need to clean it up. You have to make it inviting. Our city at this particular time is not inviting. You know, and I think that our council people, who are supposed to represent each part of the city, are not representing us. And I think it's about time, like you say, stop fighting amongst yourselves, because there's more important things that need to be done for us as a community. And we need to look at cycles. When I go down and I see people construction stuff, the first thing I look at, how many of us are there? And then I go up to whoever's in charge and I ask them, I say, you don't have no black folks here. They're all standing on the corner. They want to work too. You know, and that's our responsibility, to train those young people, whether they come out of the jail or wherever they come out from, to get them started anew. You know, we as adults have to show them. Don't stand back and talk about it. Okay. And you know what? I know when you first started, because I worked with the Downtown Trenton Association.
That's right. No, I agree with you.
And I know what we did in this city.
All right. She makes it. Councilwoman wants to respond.
Well, I just wanted to say to Mrs. Ethel that the city council, they do have a role to play. We report the certain areas, like when the residents call us and they report a certain area to us, the protocol is that we call that complaint in and that we get a response back. But as you know, Ms. Ethel, you've been here for eons, that we can't just do it overnight. There's a long list of the properties in the city that are blighted. There's a long list of streets that are trash. We call it in, we do the protocol piece of it, and then we get answers for what they do. But they can't, it's so much that have accumulated over the years that it can't be wiped out overnight, but we are gradually working on that. We have a system now where the administration has given us a liaison. We call that liaison when we get complaints, and he has 14 days to get back to us. So we're working on it, and we're trying to clean the city up. We have weekend cleanups. Every weekend, we have went into over $500,000 worth of overtime, cleaning up alleyways, cleaning up main thoroughways. So we're working on it. It's just a process, Ms. Ethel. And I know that that doesn't sound good to taxpayers, but it is a process, and we're trying to get through it, trying to make this city appealing, because like you said, perception is everything, and we want to make our city appeal to outsiders, so we know that we need to clean it up. And we're doing a good job as far as reporting it to the administration, and the administration has laid out a lot of money because we have had so many alleyways that we needed to go through, and we have a list that you could get from the mayor's office to tell you every ward that we've been in since July, cleaning up. We have a list of all of those streets, all of the alleyways, all of the tires, all of the abandoned buildings. We have a list now that you can actually see exactly what we're doing.
No, we gotta move on. I got it
I'll talk to her later.
Okay, yeah, we got.
Oh, okay.
What do we got, Sam, time-wise?
We have about 5 minutes. This is a minute.
Five.
I just wanted to speak on two things. One is Mercer County Community College. I went to Trenton High. When I was at Trenton High, they had trades. They had fix-a-car, electricity, and things like that. But they were held accountable by their teachers or whatever. Now, in the accountability aspect of it, you know, I live in Trenton. I love patronizing my people and all of that kind of stuff. But the accountability, I mean, I can't tell you the times that, I don't know, they just didn't come back or whatever and things like that. That's one thing. that I wanted to speak of. And the other thing is, we speak about, you know, all of the projects and everything going around throughout Trenton, and the workers coming from all over the place. I can't tell you the impact that it has on our youth, not seeing themselves doing the work in their own communities. How can they strive to be something when they don't see it?
I understand.
So I think that that's a very, very important, urgent, imperative mission
I agree.
that our children see themselves. That's what they saw when we all owned businesses.
Tracy, and your other last word. Okay.
My question is to the administration and to City Council, and it's basically going to be around development and how do we support local small development companies in the community. So to Amini's question of how do our kids see us in this community, and that's very important. Cities don't get built without tax abatements. And the city of Trenton has consistently done 5-year tax abatements. When you look at Philadelphia, when you look at New Brunswick, there's 30-year tax abatements. The fact of the matter is that you have to jumpstart development in the city. You can't build a house in the city. When you got property in Middleton going for $180,000 now, property on Streets Avenue going for $15,000 now, how much building are you going to do in a city where you have low property values and high taxes? That's right. That don't mix. Between administration and council, we have to come together at first and start saying, okay, small businesses first, local, small, minority contractors that can participate in development here in the city. We have to look at tax abatement. I can't build a house here. My brother Ed can't build a house here without tax abatement. It just doesn't work in a city like this. So my question is to the administration and to the council, how do we start looking at bigger developers that say we want 20, 30-year tax abatement, and they've done it here in the city, and then the smaller developers that say, okay, we want to do 4, 5, 10 houses at a time. Bring in our people. See, number one, I've been in the city for 23 years. 80% of contracts that I've worked on in the city have been small, local, minority contractors. Check with Hughes Funeral Home right now, 80% black and local contractors are over here. We can do this as a city, but the city has to look at that as an option.
Thank you.
I can just respond.
You got to respond? We got you.
You're absolutely right, and I think that's what we're doing. We spoke about before is having these redevelopment areas built on a neighborhood. It's looking at these areas, and again, this is something that the council president has talked about, is this process of redevelopment agreements, of looking at an area where there are 6 or 7 houses, 8 houses, and saying, okay, who can do this? It's not just the rich people from outside. Actually, at the end of the day, Trenton is in one of these places that there's a lot of incentives out there. There's opportunity zones, there's redevelopment zones, there's road, there's a lot of money that should be available for a local developer to put a minimum amount, say, okay, we're in the city, can you feel in this consolidated area that you can help, that you want to help? Because absolutely, doing one house at a time is good, but that's not really going to help a neighborhood. You have to do 8 houses. You have to do 10 houses, because you know every single block in the city has vacant houses. 3,000 of them in the city are vacant right now. So that's a lot. That's a lot of houses. So let's, instead of doing one at a time, which is sort of how it's been done in the past, let's look at it in a consolidated area. So it's exactly, you're absolutely right, and that's what we want to do. And tax abatement is going to be a big portion of that, because we want, you have to be able to make money. You have to have the opportunity to make money. And we're not doing it for free, because no developer is going to do it for free, right? If someone has money, they're not going to do it for free. So that's just not how this country works. So we have to give them an opportunity. You're absolutely right. New Brunswick's done it. Jersey City's done it. Jersey City, the only reason why they're not doing tax abatement anymore is because they're booming. They're booming. That's why they're not getting tax abatements. New York's the same thing. So.
Great. Andrew?
Yes. One thing.
Make it quick, Andrew.
I'm going to make it quick. Working in the community as long as I have been doing it, and I'm getting a lot of reports. We have a lot of young black people, not young and older, are making money.
Old
but
black
it's
people
not.
too.
No, it's not old. They're younger, but they're making money in the city. It's not on record.
That's right.
Like I'm gonna tell you, we have car mechanics illegally fixing up in the city. We've got car detailing. A lot of young black men and doing that. We have food service. A lot of people cooking out their house selling dinners. We have lawnmower services that guys go around and cook. The daycare centers, A lot of people are not legal, they are doing it. Now this is what I'm asking, and I have sent some of these people to you, haven't I, John? Now I want to understand why we can't get something put out from the Black Business Association and have them come and do the proper paperwork so they could be legal. Now what we are doing here in this city, it's money being made, and the underground money. But like I said, if we could send something out and you can call them in and let's see if we can get them legally done.
That's no problem. That's good, right? All right, I'll let the councilwoman speak and I'll close it out.
Mr. Muhammad, we just passed an ordinance for the city of Trenton that if you violate that ordinance when you're running a daycare or you're cooking out of a food truck in front of your house, instead of coming down to the clerk's office, registering your business, we just passed an ordinance on Thursday that they will be fined up to $1,500 because we have people with food trucks that are parked downtown in front of our businesses that are licensed to sell. So in order for us to be able to tamper that number down, we had to come up with an ordinance. So the clerk just had an ordinance passed on Thursday that will address that very issue.
Well, I'm not talking, I understand what you have, but I'm talking about showing them the proper way to open the business, not about finding them.
Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone in this room is my witness. If you can identify, and I'm gonna ask Jill to back me up, 30 of these underground businesses that are making money.
I give you 50.
50.
Go ahead. I'm ready.
Okay, listen. This is what we're gonna do. There's a 16-week training program to get them together, right? And there's a number that's attached to that program. The chamber will sponsor those businesses, but they have to put up $100 each. Right? Okay? So because this is not about free. This is about people having some skin in the game, and we'll put the money up, right? Now, we're gonna call you on it. They want to play. Jill has a program. 16 weeks. We'll take them from the bottom to the top, but they got to be committed. And then we're gonna report back to you all. One, the list of people he provides.
Okay.
And then where they are. We'll do that. But do you think we should do this again?
Yes.
All panelists, nothing here said was personal today, but we all acknowledge that we got to do better, right? And to Sister Jones's point, we got to be accountable for this community. So if some of you work for the state, you work for corporations, ask them, well, are they hiring black folks? Are they contracting with black folks? You have to be our eyes and ears. If you're not holding them accountable, the people that you're eating from, you know, you got to help the other folks do better. So let's start the new year off right. We're going to do another one of these, Sam, and then we're going to reporting out. But we'll follow up. Thank you so much.
Part of the capital area Black Caucus and the work that we do. Hold on for a second.
Hold up, folks.
Wait.
Give me a minute. We're not done. John was supposed to transition you. That's why we said we were. Part of what we do is we also like to honor people from the community, right? We can't just talk about what we do and not honor the shoulders that we stand on. This is Black History Month, and so we're not giving people opportunities to give speeches today, but we do have some people that we want to say thank you to and give them their flowers while they yet live.
Amen.
Right? I think it's really critical. Black History Month, we have people that pave the way for us. And every time I get an opportunity, I always shine a light on my mother who was here, who showed me at 8 years old. When I was 8, we moved to a little town in South Jersey called Sicklerville, New Jersey. When we moved there, there was nobody of color the whole town was about 3% minority. And my mother in 1977 decided, same year Harvey Milk ran for council out in San Francisco. Watch the movie Milk if you don't know who he is. My mother ran for council, for school board there, and became the first woman of color, the first woman, and the first person under 30 years old to ever be elected to office there. That set in motion for me trying to figure out how to be a partner of equity. How do we begin to push equity in our communities, which is why I'm here at the YMCA, because it's an equity leader. We want to try and push equity. We have people in our community who have paved the way. And some of them are not here today, but when you hear me call your organization or your name, I'd like for you to come up front, and I'd like for our photographer to make sure we get a really good photo of them. And I'd like for you guys to make sure that we clap for them and the work that they've done. Like Michael Jordan, LeBron, and Kobe were all standing in the room together. Because I don't know who you like. Right. like they were all standing in the room together.
Or Serena Williams.
Or Serena Williams. Right? Or Serena. See, that's the equity leader right there. That's great. So very quickly, Tanya Grant, who is not here, but please give her a hand. Sister Gail Hodges, who is not here, but please give her a hand. Ron Jones from the Mercer County Panhandle Council, who is here. Please give him a hand. John, you want to take this picture with them, please? Yes, sir. Anyone here from the Interdenominational Ministry Alliance of Trenton and surrounding areas? They called it. Okay. Covenant Partners of New Jersey? Yeah. You guys keep doing the work. Come on in here. This bookend on John. Yeah.
Yeah, tall to the shore.
I better bend down a little bit more. Thank you so much. This brother is here. Yeah. You always get a chance to hear him talk. I want to say thank you to this gentleman because when I first got here, working under Doug Palmer in 2003, I thought I knew Trenton because I'd been working here. He got me around to begin to understand that granular look that you really need to have and understand in the city when you start talking about people and partners. Mr. Andrew Bobbitt. Thank you, the voice.
Gotta be watching what you call me around here.
In the middle, also known as
That's one name nobody knows. Appreciate everything.
This brother, Mercer County Basketball Hall of Fame, and known all over the city, Brother Mark Bass.
Yes.
Concerned black pastors and ministers of Greater Trenton, they're not here. Please give them a hand. We might know this person. Brother John Harmon, an African American Thank you. And the last one, she's been at every single one of these. And it's funny, when we walked out the last time, one of the constituents said, you need to be honoring. I said, next month, man, but don't be telling her. You know? Sister Janetta Smart with it.
True soldier.
Yes.
So here's what I'm going to tell tell you before you leave, there are a couple things that we really need in order to continue to keep these dialogues going. John is going to come back. We had the superintendent here 2 months ago. We want to bring him back. We want to have these vibrant discussions, but we want to be able to let you know. So there's a sign-in sheet that was back there, that's back there now, that wasn't there when you first came in. I need to make sure that we get your email addresses so that we can put you on the list, so that you continually get information about what we're doing, so that we can reach out to you. Okay? The last thing is that you don't have to leave right now. Right? We got you some food in the bag, something to drink. If you want to just sit around and talk, you can sit around and do that. We want you to get an opportunity to build relationship. One of my mentors taught us very early on that relationship precedes work. Right?
That's true.
And the generation prior to my generation built relationships very heavily. They talked a lot more. So that when somebody didn't show up at your event, it wasn't because they didn't care. Right. You already knew that they had a situation or an issue. Yeah. And you had built a strong enough relationship that it could withstand that. Today we haven't built strong enough relationships, so we wanted you to be able to break some bread together, just sit around and talk. We got some time. I have the keys to the building, so when you're ready to leave, thank you for coming. We look forward to seeing you. Next month. Thank you so much. Next month we won't be in this room, because next month's program is going to be too big to hold in this room. Next month we're looking at honoring 100 black women in this community for Women in History Month. So it will be in the gymnasium. We need you to show up. We need you to show up, because we know that somebody that you know is going to be on that list, but more importantly, we want to honor them for the work that they plowed into this community. Thank you for reminding me of that. It's second Saturday of next month.
12 o'clock.
12 o'clock.